10,000 cases that were filed against ICE resulted in ICE losing in front of hundreds of judges from different political parties. I want to give a hat tip to Politico, Kyle Cheney over there for covering this. They spent 10 months tracking the outcomes in tens of thousands of lawsuits brought by ICE detainees amid this unprecedented detention push. And it's not even a close call. Judges have ruled against ICE more than 10,000 times, about a 9-to-1 ratio of the Justice Department losing these cases. Remember when you used to hear the Justice Department would win 95% of the cases or 96% of the case? It was always a number like that. You don't want the feds to ever come after you because they've got a 90+% chance of winning. Well, now that's been completely inverted. The feds had about a 10% chance of winning or less, and then a 90% chance of losing. And Politico kept this database where they go through, all of this. And by the way, it's not like, it's the Biden judges or the Obama judges. As Kyle Cheney writes, it's all rooted in an unprecedented assertion of detention authority ICE claimed last year, which led to an overwhelmingly revulsion by courts that cut across ideology. And we're talking about, from those 10,000 cases, we're talking about 430 different judges. 430 different judges. Obama judges, Biden judges, sure. But lots of Trump judges and Reagan judges and George W. Bush judges and Clinton judges. Like this Reagan judge right here in the Southern District of Texas, who presided over a case involving someone by the name of Eva Landeros, who was detained in the custody of Department of Homeland Security, ICE. They challenged the continued detention. And let me just give you this story because I could read for you 10,000 of them, but they're kind of like this. The petitioner, a citizen of Mexico, entered the United States in February 2012 without inspection and has resided continuously in the United States for more than 13 years. The petitioner is a single mother to two United States children, ages 17 and 12, who rely heavily on this petitioner, on Eva, for their daily care, emotional guidance, and financial support. The petitioner has no criminal history, has never been arrested. On September 23rd, 2025, ICE arrested her while she was on her way to work. She has been in ICE custody since that time. Following her arrest by ICE, DHS served the petitioner with a notice to appear in immigration court, initiating removal proceedings, and charging her as inadmissible under her statute. On January 13, 2026, an immigration judge, relying on the Board of Immigration Appeals decision, found that it lacked jurisdiction to consider the request for release on bond. The petitioner has a pending U visa petition before the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, which, if approved, petitioner claims would provide lawful status and independently warrant her release from detention while the application remains under adjudication. She also has a pending 42B cancellation of removal application. On January 29, 2026, the petitioner filed for a writ of habeas corpus, challenging her continued detention. Among other arguments, she alleges that her detention violates the Fifth Amendment due process clause. She seeks release from custody, among other relief. The respondents have answered with a response and motion for summary judgment, opposing habeas relief. The respondents do not contest the facts asserted in the petition or exhibits. The petitioner filed a reply, and the court ultimately finds that this petitioner had her rights violated and she should be released. Here's a person with no criminal history who is going through a visa process, going through a path to use lawful methods, like wasn't hiding it, but no criminal history, supporting a 17-year-old and a 12-year-old, was going to work, ostensibly paying taxes and contributing to society, was kept detained for a substantially long period of time, the family being ripped apart. And then this Reagan appointed judge is saying, what are we doing here? Why are you targeting this mom? Let the mom go. And, the mom's not for us. Also, if you want to go through these proceedings, why are you putting this mom in a cage? Like, what are you doing here? So you hear this, and then remember Alligator Alcatraz, everybody? Think about all of those cases, right? Alligator Alcatraz now being shut down. $1 to $2 billion were put into this because why? Donald Trump's like, we need to reopen Alcatraz and let's show how tough we are by doing memes of alligators eating immigrants. Ha ha ha. And so we're going to put a concentration camp in the Everglades where the weather conditions make this quite literally a form of torture. And also you can't build a place like this in that area. The climate is unsustainable. And also, let's build it on indigenous property to make this extra horrific. And then a year later, they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't work. And basically, when you do the math of the 1,000 migrants or so that were in there, basically the cost per migrant, $777,000 per migrant to keep them in that detention center for the 1 year that this detention center was open. So no wonder the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, has found that there was a 18% increase year over year in waste, fraud, and abuse in the government under the Trump regime. After they promised that they were going to root out trillions, of course they're creating more. Don't even get me started on all the other economic indicators. But when you lose 10,000 cases and you have a 10% win rate, ooh, I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, podcast, and Substack. Harry being one of those former top federal prosecutors who would enjoy a win rate in his office in the 90% or more, because you would bring cases that you would win. You would investigate it. You wouldn't bring BS cases in front of grand juries. You'd often be able to, based on the power of the investigation, enter into plea deals with the individual who was being investigated. And if you went to trial, the facts were usually strong enough where you would win these cases. And now to see a complete inversion, 10,000 cases. I wish I was being hyperbolic there with, 10,000 losses, Harry.
There's one other thing you would do, Ben, which is if you lost again and again on the same issue and got your brains beat in by the federal court, you would stop digging. What's going on here is that ICE is trying again and again and again and not taking no for an answer on this completely newfangled and illogical legal interpretation. And here's what it is. They want to say that the rules for so-called applicants for admission, like you show up at the border and you say, I'd like to apply. They want to say that that applies to all these people who, as you say, many of them have lived in the country decades, maybe have a parking ticket, have jobs, pay taxes, raise families. To the ICE, they want to call them applicants for admission still, which doesn't make sense in terms of the statute and doesn't make sense in terms of the policy. And the reason they are so hot and bothered to do it is if they could do that, they would have the ability, which ICE has at the border, to just take someone by the collar, stick them in a detention center, and the next thing they know, they are in South Sudan or any other country with no process at all. So what has happened again and again and again, and by the way, there are something like 875 active judges in the whole country, and there's a number of senior ones as well. But when you're talking about 430 different judges, that's a huge chunk of the whole federal judiciary. At the district court level, it's been overwhelming, 300 some to 30 or so who have ruled this way. But what's going on is they continue to press on a issue that they're losing and losing and losing again. It will probably eventually go to the Supreme Court. 5 courts of appeals have weighed in. 3 of them have also gone against the administration. But the reason they're doing it, and the reason you have really, as you say, these poster children for what anyone with any sense would say, we do not want to make these guys a priority. They are as far as possible from the murderers, rapists, and pet eaters that they say they're going after. These are good. These are in effect, good American citizens in so many cases, but they want this extreme authority and this outlandish, or at least newfangled interpretation. So they don't have to deal with any courts. And the technical point that court after court is holding is simply, you can bring a habeas petition, just as the court found way back when in the first Boasberg case. You can bring a habeas petition. And to get around that, so all the courts are doing is saying, I'll grant you some freedom until the ICE comes at you. But that means that you're at liberty. You're not in one of these detention center hellholes, and ICE is going to have to come up with real arguments, reason to hold you and deport you. And that is their number one priority. There are many, many instances of cases in which courts have held it, and ICE is essentially not complying. That's what happened most recently in this case out of Rhode Island, where basically they were, the judge was hoodwinked. The AUSA had to totally fall on his sword. But ICE just is bound and determined to get this provision of law. So, yeah, I would, if I were also going against the Constitution, this is the right to habeas, again and again and again, I would see my 90% victory percentage plummet pretty damn quickly. But this is a whole big legal initiative. And I just got to say, even if you could somehow, even if the Supreme Court eventually greenslight the change, it's a heartless one, right? They want to now really go after people who've been here for decades and being regular citizens, shoulder to shoulder with all of us. And they want to do it by saying, you're still an applicant for admission, which is just against the facts and the law.
Everybody, make sure you subscribe to the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Harry, appreciate you.
You too, Ben.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.